Hello, I'm Robin Gibson, and this is your Harvard House Money Morsel. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us again. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you get a notification when we release a new video. I'm sitting today with Willie Pelser, Chief Economist of Harvard House. Willie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you again.
We're filming on Friday, the 22nd of July, and yesterday the governor of the Reserve Bank raised the prime interest rate by 0.75%. Willie, that seems a very, very aggressive rise for a country that's struggling and in economic difficulty. Please help us to understand how they got to this point.
Thank you, Robin. To be honest, I think it is a bit of a shock to the system, although to some extent it was anticipated. Perhaps not the 75 basis points and perhaps the 50 basis points, but I think we must just put it in perspective as well. So, first of all, when the bank increased rates, they raised a rate called the repo. The net effect is prime, which hits you and me, the average consumer. So that prime is now at 9%. But if we step back, the SARB's mandate is to control price stability, or actually allow price stability in an economy, and to a secondary sort of effect is to promote economic growth. So yes, the economy is struggling, the consumer is struggling, and now we get the 75 basis points. But the price mechanism is inflation, and we've spoken about inflation quite a lot in this forum. Inflation came out the day before, being on Wednesday, and it was 7.4% on the overall consumer price index. So that in itself is an alarming light because the Reserve Bank has a target for themselves to average inflation between 6 and 3%. So we work on sort of 4.5%, the midway between that. So we're above that. And this is not the first print above that. So, and if we look at that inflation, because remember the SARB had this info before they made the decision. And I also just quickly went through that day to see what would this SARB do tomorrow. And if we look at the two main culprits in the system is energy. We all know petrol prices going up because of oil. So that's running at 7, 8, 9% in itself. And then the other component is food. So if we break that down and we go to bread and fats and oils, that's running at a rate of 36% increase.
Wow.
So some of the components are actually lower than that. But the highlight for me in the speech actually was the concern of entrenched high inflation in the mind of the average person. So when you go to your next salary, people are going to say, we're not talking 4.5 or 6 or 3% increases. We demand a higher. And that's the SARB's concern, is that inflation can feed on itself. And I'll give one or two examples. And he's guiding against that. Now, the examples I'm talking about is when we start chasing prices because we're concerned that there won't be enough. So if a company or product that you buy, the price is just escalating, people keep on buying because they're concerned we won't have for tomorrow. That pushes in inflation in itself, not just the cost effects of petrol and food and so on. And that's what they guarded against. So that's the reason for the 75 basis points. The hurt factor in the system, coming back to the prime rate, is, I just did a quick calculation. So for a person who's financing a house of R1 million, at this rate, it takes an extra 1,200 Rand out of his pocket to finance or to finance his repayment on that bond. That's not all that we are faced with, because you said, we are struggling and so on. Remember petrol price. So there's an extra between 500 and 1,000 Rand extra in petrol, depending on what type of vehicle you have. The food I've mentioned. So suddenly the average consumer is looking at between 2,500 to 3,500 Rand extra per month to do the normal stuff, to eat, to live, and so on. So but unfortunately, it happened. We are in this system. Personally, I'm happy we did the 75, just from let's focus on future inflation. Let's get the inflation over the hump so that we can stabilize. And that's a trend all over the world. the other central banks, the ECB, hiked rates by 50 basis points.
Okay.
The first time in a long time. So they moved from 0 to 0.5%,
Yes.
which is in itself a massive increase. So yeah, the world's facing this inflation, and we need aggressive mechanisms actually to contain it.
Okay. So, Billy, would a good way to look at it is that we're putting the brakes on hard because we see something coming up. It might look like we're braking too hard, but that's to avoid a later implication.
Yeah, I think the concern in the average person or analyst's mind is this might be too aggressive, but I think we'll reap the reward perhaps in a year's time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Billy, thanks so much for giving us the color on
Thank you.
that. Thank you for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in.